Hello everyone and welcome to the biology lecture series, and today we'll be discussing the topic reproduction. So in the previous lecture I've introduced you to the topic reproduction, and we studied about the definition of the reproduction. Then we studied that reproductions are of two types, asexual as well as the sexual reproduction. Then we studied about the asexual reproduction in detail, and we studied about what are the types of asexual reproduction. Okay, so in this session, we'll talk about the sexual reproduction. So first, I will be introducing you to the topic sexual reproduction, and then we'll talk about this in detail. Okay, we'll talk about sexual reproduction in flowers first. Alright, so let's start with the definition of the sexual reproduction. So here, sexual reproduction involves the production of the offsprings, or you can say the young ones, the progeny, by formation and the fusion of special haploid cells known as gamete. So here what is happening here? First of all, there is the formation of the gametes, and after the formation of the gametes, there is fusion of these gametes. And these gametes are haploid, means you can say they are N, or they contain one set of chromosome. Haploid means they contain one set of chromosome. Okay. Here, formation of gametes. Formation of gametes is known as gametogenesis. Okay. First, the gametes are formed. So here, male gamete as well as female gamete are formed. So this is how you represent the male, and this is how you represent the female. So one is the male gamete, another one is the female gamete. Okay, so two gametes are formed, means two parents are involved. One is male, another one is female. In asexual reproduction, one parent was involved. After the formation of the gametes, so if we talk about humans, you can say sperms are formed, or sperms are the male gametes, and ovum is the female gamete or ova. So these two gametes are formed by the process known as gametogenesis, and then there is a fusion of these gametes. Okay, then these two gametes, they fuse, and both these gametes, they are haploid. And when they fuse, then what happens? This process is known as fertilization. Okay, so this process is known as fertilization. And what is happening after the fertilization? A zygote is formed, which is diploid, means 2N. Okay, so this is known as the zygote. Okay, and from the zygote, embryo will develop, and from the embryo, entire organism is developed. First is the formation of the gamete, which I have told you, known as gametogenesis. Next is the fusion of the gametes, which is known as the fertilization. Clear? So we can write what are the steps of the sexual reproduction. First is the gamete formation. Then what happens after gamete formation? Second is fusion of the gametes. Then after fusion of the gametes, formation of the zygote, and then you can say zygote is formed, and from the zygote embryo will be formed, and then embryo will undergo differentiation to form the entire organism. So you can say embryogenesis. Here, the embryo which is formed after the fusion of the gametes, it will differentiate and it will give rise to entire organisms. So these are the steps, or the major steps that are involved in the sexual reproduction. Gamete formation is known as gametogenesis. Fusion of gametes is known as the fertilization, and the third process is known as embryogenesis, where what happens? The embryo will differentiate to form the entire new organisms. Alright. Now, in sexual reproduction, two parents are involved. First one is the male gamete, another one is the female gamete, and this process is known as sexual reproduction. Now, where do sexual reproduction takes place? So it takes place in nearly all the animals, or you can say in the higher organisms, or you can say in the vertebrates. Okay, asexual reproduction, it takes place in the lower organisms such as bacteria and all. But sexual reproduction, it takes place in the higher organisms, or you can say complex organisms. So these higher organisms, okay, these are complex also. Okay, they have complex structural organization. So sexual reproduction occurs in all animals, including those which reproduce asexually also. So some of the organisms, they can reproduce by both methods, asexual as well as sexual reproduction. Okay. Now, in most animals, there are two sexes. One is the male, another one is the female, and the differences between them, they are genetically determined. Okay. So here, the genome of the organism is also involved. So one is the male partner, another one is the female partner, and they produce the male sperm, male gamete as well as the female gamete, and these two gametes, they fuse with each other and they give rise to offsprings, okay, which have some resemblance with the parent. Okay, here the progeny which is produced is not exactly, you can say, similar to the parent, but here due to the process of recombination, the progeny which is produced, it is not exactly similar to the parent. Okay. Now let's study about the type of sexual reproduction. So first one is the syngamy. So syn means fusion. Okay. So it involves the complete and permanent fusion of two gametes to form a composite cell known as the zygote. So this I've already told you, one is the male gamete, another one is the female gamete. So if this is the sperm and this is the ova, then it will fertilize. Okay, they will fuse together, which is known as fertilization. And after fertilization, what will be developed? A diploid zygote is developed. Okay, this will be 2n, and these gametes are haploid. A zygote contains two sets of chromosomes. That's why it is diploid. So 2n condition is known as diploid. Clear? Now this is the most common mode of sexual reproduction. Clear? Now next is the conjugation. In conjugation, what happens? It involves temporary pairing of the two parents which exchange their pronuclei and then undergo the process of separation. So this is seen in paramecium. Okay, here again you can see two parents are involved, and there is a temporary pairing of this two parents. Okay, and they exchange, or there is an exchange of the pronuclei. Okay, and then they undergo separation after the exchange of the pronuclei. So this is a very complex process. Okay, but here you have to you should know about the basics. What is conjugation? So you should remember two parents involved because it is sexual reproduction. So obviously two parents will be involved, and there is the exchange of the pronuclei. Okay, between the two, you can say the partners, and then they undergo separation. So here there is a formation of conjugation tube, or you can say sex pilus and all. Okay, through which the transfer takes place. Now let's study about the characteristic of the sexual reproduction. Now it is generally biparental, that is it involves two parents. Now second is it involves formation and the fusion of the gametes. This we have already discussed. Formation of gametes is known as gametogenesis, and fusion of gametes, this is known as fertilization. Now you can see here two parents are involved. Okay, so because the two parents are involved and their genes will recombine. Okay, so in sexual reproduction, recombination takes place. Recombination of the, you can say, the genes okay, or the DNA you can say. So because of this recombination, what is happening? There is a crossing over also happening during the sexual reproduction, because sexual reproduction, it involves meiosis. And during meiosis, you should know what takes place: crossing over. During meiosis, there is crossing over, as well as there is the recombination. So because of these two processes, crossing over and recombination, the progeny which is produced, it is not exactly similar to the parent, okay, but it shows some similarity to the parent. Clear? Now, third point is cell divisions are both meiotic as well as the mitotic during gamete formation, and mitotic during the development of the zygote into the offsprings. Clear? So what happens during the gamete formation? Both meiosis as well as mitotic divisions takes place. So first you should know about the mitosis and the meiosis. So mitosis, you must be already knowing, it is known as the equational division. Okay. Now mitosis, what happens if this was the cell with if this was a haploid cell, then after mitosis the haploid condition will be maintained. Okay. Now if we talk about meiosis, in meiosis what happens? Initially the cell should be diploid. Okay, then only meiosis will take place, and after meiosis the cell will be haploid. So gamete formation means the formation of the gametes or the gametogenesis. It involves both meiotic as well as the mitotic division. So example I can give you: microsporogenesis. Alright, what happens here? Initially there is a microspore mother cell. Okay, initially there is a microspore mother cell which is diploid. Okay, so you can call this as microspore mother cell. Then meiosis takes place in this cell, and after meiosis, so meiosis is also known as the reductional division. Here what happens, if the individual was diploid, it will be transformed into the haploid individual. Okay, that's why meiosis is known as reductional division. Clear? So here after meiosis, this microspore mother cell, this will give rise to microspores. Okay, initially a tetrad of microspore is formed, and then enter the hyes, and these microspore then give rise to the pollen grain. And the pollen grain will produce the two male gametes which will fertilize the egg cell. Clear? So here you can see initially meiosis takes place. Okay, and then later on mitosis will take place. Mitosis will take place when the microspore they develop into the pollen grain, then mitosis takes place. Clear? Initially the microspore mother cell which is diploid, it undergoes meiosis to form haploid microspores. Clear? Now these haploid microspores, they undergo mitosis to form haploids pollen grain. Clear? So we can say cell divisions are both meiotic as well as mitotic during the gamete formation. Okay, pollen grain, this will form the gametes. Now, and they are only mitotic during the development of the zygote. So what is happening? These are the two gametes, they fertilize and they form the diploid zygote, and this diploid zygote, this will undergo mitosis and it will form diploid individual. Okay, it will give rise to diploid individual. Clear? Now next question is next point is the offerings are not genetically identical to the parent. This I've already explained you, as two parents are involved, and then meiosis is also involved. Okay, so meiosis is involved in the gamete formation, and during the meiosis, recombination and crossing over takes place, and because of this, there is the exchange of the genetic material. All right, so the offerings, they are not genetically identical to the parent, but they are the recombination product. Okay, they are the recombination product of the parents. The next point is fertilization in the case of humans is internal. Okay, in humans, if we talk about, the fertilization is internal. Okay, internal fertilization means it is happening within the body. Okay, it is happening within the body. So the sperms, they fertilize the egg cell within the body. Okay, now the infants, they feed on the mother's milk. This is also true. Okay, and the parental care is very well developed, and the young ones, they are taken care by the parents. So that's why the survival rate is also very high. Clear? Because they undergo parental care. Okay, and the infants, and you can say the newborn, okay, or the infants, they feed on the mother's milk, so they get nutrition from the mother milk initially, as well as this mother's milk also provide immunity to the growing child. Okay, growing baby. Now, what is the significance of sexual reproduction? First is it results in the multiplication as well as perpetuation of the species. Perpetuation, we already know, it provides the stability to the species. Okay, now it contributes to evolution of the species also by introducing variation. Okay, so because of the sexual reproduction, variation arises, and this variation arises why? Because sexual reproduction involves meiosis. And during meiosis, we have already studied, crossing over as well as recombination takes place. So because of this crossing over and recombination, this gives rise to the variation, and this variation accumulate over time, and it gives rise to new species. Okay, whereas if we talk about asexual reproduction, there only mitosis is involved, there is only one parent is involved, means it is uniparental. Okay, only one parent is involved. Okay, there is no meiosis also, so there is no variation, so it doesn't give rise to new species. So sexual reproduction, it contributes to the evolution, okay, of the species by introducing variation in a population much more rapidly than the asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction doesn't lead to the evolution of the species because there is no variation during the asexual reproduction. Okay, this is clear. Now let's talk about some of the terms that are related to the reproduction. The first term is the fertilization. So this I've already told you, it is the process of fusion of the gametes. And after fertilization, what is formed? Zygote is formed. Clear? So some of the processes are post-fertilization, some of the processes are pre-fertilization. Okay, so we have fertilization here. Fertilization is the fusion of the gametes. So some events, they are known as the pre-fertilization events, means which are happening before fertilization. So these pre-fertilization, what will be the pre-fertilization? Formation of gametes. Gamete formation means gametogenesis. Okay, this is the pre-fertilization event. Then we have the post-fertilization event. Post-fertilization means after the fertilization. So what will be the post-fertilization event? You can say embryogenesis. Embryogenesis is a post-fertilization event. Now, next one is the bisexual. Next one is the unisexual organism. What are unisexual organisms? So in the case of humans, male and the female sex organs, okay, testes and the ovaries, you can say, they are separate, and therefore human beings, they are known as unisexual organisms. Then we have bisexual organisms. Okay, so here what happens? So in some plants as well as some organisms like tapeworm, earthworm, so these are known as the bisexual organisms or hermaphrodites. Okay, they are also known as hermaphrodite. Here what happens? Both male as well as the female organs are present in the same individual. So these are individuals are known as bisexual or hermaphrodite. Clear? Now next are the gonads. What are gonads? So organs which are involved in the formation of gametes, these are known as gonads. Okay, so gametes are produced in the gonads. So males will have gonads and females will also have gonads, and the gametes are produced within the gonads through the process known as meiosis. Clear? Now there are some cells such as microspore mother cell as well as megaspore mother cells. So these cells undergo meiosis and then they form the gametes. Next is the copulation or mating. What does these terms means? So the process of transfer of male gametes into the female body, this is known as copulation or mating. Clear? And we have studied that the fertilization is internal in the case of humans, you can say. Alright, so here what happens? The male gamete, which is known as the sperm, it is released into the female body, and the fertilization is internal. It takes place within the body. Now let's study about the reproduction in the flowering plants. Okay, first we will concentrate about the reproduction in the flowering plants. So we'll be studying about the parts or the reproductive parts of the flower. Okay, and then we'll study about the structure of the flower also, and what are the parts of the flower. Okay, so first I have shown you this image. So this image shows you the vertical section of a typical flower. So how a typical flower looks like? Here you can see it consists of the petals, okay, sepals, stamens, as well as the this gynoecium. Okay, so what are sepals? Sepals are or you can say the collection of the sepals, it is known as calyx. Clear? Then the collection of the petals, it is known as corolla. Okay, then stamens represent the male reproductive organ or the part of the flower, okay, and it is known as Androecium. Now carpel, this is the female reproductive part of the flower and is known as the gynoecium. What is thalamus? Thalamus is the swollen part, okay, of the pedicel. So the stalk of the flower, it is known as the pedicel, and the swollen part, it is known as the thalamus. Okay, it is the swollen part, okay, on which all these structures are born. So you can see on this thalamus, sepals are present, petals are present, stamens as well as the carpels are present. Okay, so this is the swollen part of the stalk of the flower, okay, which is known as the pedicel. So the stalk of the leaf is known as the petiole, stalk of the flower is known as the pedicel, and stalk of the inflorescence, it is known as peduncle. Clear? Now we'll talk about each of these. So let's first talk about the parts of the flower. So the flower consists of the following part. First one is the calyx, or you can say the outermost. Okay, this is the outermost whorl. Alright, this is the outermost whorl, which is known as the calyx. Okay, so you can say, first of all, you can write there are 4 whorls. Okay, a particular or a typical flower, it consists of 4 whorls. So first one is the calyx, which is the outermost. Inner to calyx we have the corolla. Then inner to corolla, what is present? Androecium, which consists of the stamen, and the innermost whorl is known as the gynoecium. This is clear? So these are the 4 whorls of a typical flower. Calyx is the outermost, and the gynoecium, it is the innermost. Alright, now calyx, they are known as the sepals. Okay, the sepals collectively, they are known as the calyx. Now they are usually green in color and protect the inner walls of the flower, especially during the bud formation. Clear? So what are sepals? Sepals are usually modified petal leaves only. Okay, what are sepals? They are modified leaves only, which are green in color. And what is the role? They protect the inner walls from the damage. Clear? Next is the corolla. So corolla is the innermost, corolla is the inner whorl to calyx. Okay, or you can say the inner whorl, or you can say the whorl beneath the corolla is the beneath the calyx is the corolla. Now it consists of colored petals. So petals you have seen, you must have observed that they are of different colors. So corolla, it is made up of collection of the petals which are colored. Now they are normally large, okay, and they are fragrant and they are of bright color. So this bright color is to attract the animals as well as the insect for pollination. Okay, so this is the primary function of the petals, to attract the animals as well as the insect for pollination. And what is pollination? It is the transfer of the, you can say, pollen grains from one flower to another flower, or you can say to the similar flower also. So how can you define pollination? It is the transfer of the pollens from, you can say, anther of one flower to stigma of the same flower or different flower. Clear? Now next is the Androecium. So the whorl inner to the corolla is known as the Androecium. It can also be called as the stamen, okay, or the male reproductive organ. So Androecium, it consists of the stamen, okay, and is also known as the male reproductive organ of the flower. Now what is the stamen made up of? It is made up of filament and the anther. Clear? So the stamens are referred to as the male reproductive organ, and a typical stamen is differentiated into three parts. The first part, okay, is known as the filament. Next part is the connective, and the third part is known as the anther. Now filament, it forms the stalk that bears more or less cylindrical or ovoid anther. Okay. Now connective tissue, it connects anther to the filament. And what is anther? It is present on top of the filament. Now each anther consists of two lobes. That is why it is known as the bilobed. So this is how an anther looks like. Okay. So this is how a stamen look like. So this is the stamen. This is the bilobed anther. Here this is known as the filament. Clear? Now each anther consists of two lobes. That's why it is known as the bilobe. And anther lobe has the pollen grains. Okay, so both the anther lobe, they have the pollen sacs which contain millions of tiny microscopic grains known as the microspores, which are haploid, which have been produced by the meiotic division in the microspore mother cell. Clear? So each lobe, okay, it will contain two pollen sac. So if we enlarge it, the structure of the anther, so each lobe, it will contain two pollen sacs. So these are the pollen sacs in which the pollens are present. Here the pollens are present here inside. So these are the pollen sac. Okay, that are produced where? That are produced, which are present inside the anther. Okay, then here will be the filament behind it, okay, which is attached to this anther. Okay. Now the pollen grains are like yellow dusty powder in appearance. So this is an image showing you the first one. This one image is the ventral view showing you the connective. This one is the A figure, and the other one is the dorsal view of the stamen. So here you can see the connective region is present here, filament is present here, and the anthers which are bilobed. Here in the B image you can see this is a dorsal view of the stamen. Okay, so these are the view of the stamen. Clear? So again we have talked about that each lobe, it contains two pollen sacs. So these pollen sacs, or you can say pollen chamber, these consist of the pollen. So these are the pollens. So if we dissect the anther, you can see each. So this is one anther lobe, this is another anther lobe. Okay, and each anther lobe, it contains two pollen sacs. Clear? So this is a TS of an anther showing you the pollen chambers or pollen sacs. Now let's talk about the gynoecium. So pistil, or you can say carpel, this represents the gynoecium and it is the female reproductive organ. Now it is located in the center of the flower. Okay, it forms the innermost whorl and it is composed of one or more carpels. Okay, so gynoecium or the pistil, this is composed of one or more carpels. Okay, the free occurring units of the carpel in the flower, they are called as pistil. Clear? So this free occurring units, okay, whenever the carpels are free, then the individual carpel is known as the pistil. Now each pistil is usually consists of three distinct parts: ovary, style, and the stigma. Okay, so you can say pistil and you can also say it as a carpel. So carpel or the pistil, it contains what are the parts of the carpel or a pistil? Swollen part or the base is known as the ovary, then the tube-like structure is called style, and in stigma it is the receptive part. Now let's talk about the base. Okay, so it which is known as the ovary. So it is the basal swollen part of the pistil. Okay, and the ovary has one or more chambers known as the loculi. So this ovary also consists of these chambers which is distributed in a special cushion like parenchyma tissue known as placenta, from which the ovules develop, or the ovules are attached to the placenta. So if we draw the structure of the ovary, so it is a swollen base, and then here you have this style, and then the upper region is known as the stigma. So this region is the stigma, this is the style, and this swollen part is known as the ovary. So this is the structure of the pistil. Okay, and the ovary has chambers. Okay, so this is one chamber, this is another chamber, and you can see ovules are present inside here. Okay, and these ovules, they are attached to the placenta. Okay, so these ovules, suppose this, okay, these are attached to the placenta. Clear? So these are the ovules. So ovules, they are present within the ovary. Okay, and ovules, they are attached to placenta. Okay, now style, it forms the top of the ovary and it arises as a long elongated structure. So long elongated structure is known as the style. Stigma, it is the terminal end of the style, and okay, so this terminal end of the style is known as the stigma, and it is also known as the receptive part. Why it is known as the receptive part? Because it receives the pollen. Okay, so this part will interact with the pollen, it will receive the pollen after the process known as pollination. Clear? So the stigma is normally rough, hairy or sticky. Why it is hairy or sticky? To hold the pollen grains during pollination process. So stigma is the receptive part. Now pollination, what is pollination? The transfer and deposition of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a flower. This is known as the pollination. Now pollination can be of two types: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Alright, so there are two kinds of pollination, and we'll talk about both of this kind of pollination in the next lecture. Alright, so in this lecture we studied about the sexual reproduction, how can you define sexual reproduction, and then we talked about the sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. Okay, then we also studied about the structure of a typical flower. Okay, we studied about the components, we studied about the 4 whorls of the flower which are present in a typical flower, and then we were talking about the pollination, and we'll talk about in detail about the self as well as the cross pollination in the next lecture. Thank you very much for listening.